Hi everyone, welcome to Time to Sew. My name is Rachel. I post quilting and sewing videos here. Last week I was so sick. I had the entire week off work. It was a flu that turned into a throat infection. And while I did spend a lot of time on the couch watching videos and resting, I did manage to film a few sewing chores and little sewing projects that I managed to get enough energy to do. So join me as I organize, mend, and play with fabric. I hope you enjoy this little look into my life as a invalid. First of all, welcome to our garage / rumpus room. My son plays PlayStation down here. We have the laundry, but we have also set up a permanent sewing space. This table I found at the Vinnie's op shop or thrift shop. It was $80, perfect nick, great size, great height. Very happy with that. For the past month, my husband has been installing new cupboards for us. These are a DIY range from Bunnings called Caboodle, where it's all delivered flat pack, and then if you have a handy husband like I do, they can install it for you. So here are some shots of him lining it all up and getting it perfect. These cupboards will not only house the vacuum cleaner and brooms, some of Dean's tools, our camping gear, but most importantly, craft supplies and fabric will be able to go into these cupboards. Don't they look pretty? We haven't quite finished. We need to put on black handles, and the sink area is not complete. With the sink, we've got a marble top that's going to go in and a brand new sink. So with new cupboards, I was inspired to start organising my sewing space. I started with the little container that holds all your tools for the sewing machine. I organised my needles into a needle case that my mother had made for me, homemade. And I have a question for you. I have a whole heap of used sewing needles. How should I dispose of them? What's your method? I'd love to know what you do to dispose of your needles safely. Next, I tackled this miscellaneous box that has all sorts of things in it. I've got the bobbins there and some leftover binding, the pale yellow one that's in my hand. I use that later on in the week for a project, so you'll see that. There was random things in here. Some stuff just needed to be put in its correct home. Other stuff needed to be chucked out. I had a whole bunch of safety pins in the bottom, which I put back into their rightful home. I then tried to sharpen my rotary blade cutter using a camping knife sharpener, and I ran the blade through this little machine multiple times, but I couldn't get it sharp enough to cut that fabric. So what's your tip? Tell me, how do you sharpen a rotary blade cutter? I need to know. By this time, I was exhausted and needed to rest on the couch and watch TV. So I hand-stitched these badges onto my husband's football scarf, and he was really pleased with that job done. Nothing like watching a classic movie when you're feeling sick. I have a few here I run to. I decided on Sense and Sensibility as I'd recently watched Good Luck to You, Leo Grande, where Emma Thompson is a Rudy Nudie, and I wanted to place her firmly back into the period drama genre. While cleaning up, I had found these gumnut leaves that I had made years ago for an art quilt, but never did anything with them, and they've sat in the tub in my cupboard for years. They are constructed with a hand-dyed fabric on one side and a batik on the other, with regular quilt wadding in between. So you right sides together, sew around the edge, turn it inside out, top stitch and also a top stitch through the center for the vein. And I decided I would make bunting for my daughter's bedroom with these gum leaves. I had so many, as you can see on the table there. I used the binding that I found earlier while cleaning up. I first ran a row of stitching to close up the binding to make a tie on one side before starting to attach the leaves. I would just push the leaves into the center of the binding and fold it over so that I could stitch a row of stitching and the gum nut was held in place. The tricky part about this was making sure that my stitching caught the binding at the back because it was quite a narrow binding. When folded over, it's only about 1/4 of an inch wide. And here is the project when finished. Quite pretty and a very different bunting than the traditional triangle bunting. Very Australian as well, which, yeah, it's really cute. I love the hand-dyed fabric and batiks. Vegemite toast and a cup of tea is essential when you're sick. And I wanted to play you my favourite line from this movie. Wait for it, wait for it.
To your sister, I wish all imaginable happiness. To Mr. Willoughby, that he may endeavour to deserve you.
Oh, love Colonel Brandon. I then decided to tackle another sewing chore, which was to fix my husband's work pants because he had ripped a giant hole in the butt, as you can see here. I used this birch iron-on mending patch and followed the instructions on the back. It did suggest using baking paper underneath, which I have put under, and to cut your patch with rounded corners, and I guess that's so it just doesn't peel up. This was a bit tricky to apply because of the nature of the rip was like a L-shaped. So I had to fiddle around with the fabric quite a bit before I was happy. And it wasn't a perfect mend. It was actually quite messy. But my husband said he did not care and he didn't need it to look beautiful. He just needed it to be fixed. So that's fine with me. I placed a hanky over the top to protect my iron. And with a dry iron, I pressed for 25 seconds. Voila! I also attached a patch on the back because, as you can see in a second, the hole didn't actually stay closed. So I just added another patch on the back. So this is a grey colour. Obviously it would have been better if it was more of a khaki colour, but I didn't particularly care. At my sewing machine, I changed my foot to my free motion quilting foot so that I could maneuver the machine in any direction, and I just did a simple top stitch around the patches to hold them in place. Decided to watch Death Comes to Pemberley today because I couldn't even remember what happened in the movie and who dies. So no spoilers. While I watched the movie, I went through my tub of fabric and made little piles according to colour because I had an idea of a little scrappy quilt that I could start. Oh, I had a whole heap of hexagons from when I thought I was going to make a full-size hexagon quilt, but instead just made a table runner, which I made a video on. I'll link that below. So I thought this scrappy quilt would be a good opportunity to use up all the last little bits of thread. I am wanting to make quilt blocks that are 4 inches by 4 inches square. So I kept that little ruler beside me so I could make sure that my quilt blocks ended up that size. This is a scrappy quilt block idea that I saw online on YouTube. Kate from The Last Homely House made a quilt in this way, and it looked so beautiful that I wanted to give it a go with all my scraps. What the quilt block entails is basically just a little square of one colour in the centre of a bigger square of another colour, ideally contrasting colours. So here I've just started with the light blue as my centre. I've added the darker colour to one side, and now I'm going to be adding the darker colour to the other side and trimming the edge. I decided that I had a 1/4 inch foot to begin with, but because I was using scraps and they weren't necessarily lined up at the edge, I just changed over to my regular foot. And just measuring against my 4 inch before cutting off how much of the fabric I needed, and then adding the darker colour to either side of what I just created. At this stage, the trimming does not need to be perfect because what I'll end up doing is with my rotary cutter and that 4 inch ruler, I will cut perfect squares of each block. So this is a really quick and easy sort of quilt block to do because you don't have to be too perfect, because the beauty is going to be in the imperfect and me just checking that the block is going to be within that 4 inch. So I ended up sitting there making quite a few, and I got better as I went along. I trimmed before each seam or after each seam, and I tried out all different colour combinations, and from doing that process I have favourites and I have others that I don't like as much. So I've already learned about what colour combinations are best going forward for this quilt. So they look much better when they're high contrast between the centre and the edge fabric. I also really want to gravitate towards more of the light tones as well as pink, purple, blue. That one on top there with the green, I hate that fabric, so that one probably won't get used. Those ones look all right. Yep, happy with those. And see that one with the blues, there's not enough contrast, so it doesn't look as good. Went to the doctor and started strong antibiotics today. Felt worse. Also grabbed my probiotics. It was Anzac Day. We made biscuits and there was only one left. Saw a bug on my fabric. Not a bug, a spider. And look at this spider. It's got these pincers. Can you see that? And then it jumped and scared me. There. But anyway, I just flicked it away and thought I'd show you that. I ended up sitting and making a few more Scrappy Quilt blocks. So here are the ones I did. I love the ones with the grey around the outside and the colour in between, in the middle. I think they look really effective, quite modern. That fabric with the blue flowers was in a quilt I made for my mother-in-law, so that fabric reminds me of her, which is nice. Dean was busy working on our little outdoor space with these new black pots and hey, what are you doing? Yes, he used the fabric scissors. Anyway, he did a good job filling up these pots with the potting mix, and he had gone out and bought new plants as well. These are Armorea, and we've had them before and they grow into a really nice sort of hedge. It's Saturday now and the antibiotics were starting to kick in. This is another caboodle DIY cupboard from Bunnings that my husband had made the week before. So in our hallway, we're just transferring all of our books from the other bookcase into this one. The tall bookcase at the end will be moved down to the craft space, so I'll be able to use that for storage as well. So this is a good chance to show off a miniature house that my daughter and I made when we were locked down during COVID and we had plenty of time on our hands. It was such a lovely time in my life. We'd play the music in the evening before dinner and do a bit more on our miniature house. This is a Japanese inspired home and every single item is made out of wood, paper, beads. Yeah, it was super cute. The lights, they're looking a bit wonky now, but they all are wired in so that you can turn on the switch and it all lights up at night. There's the little kitchen. The bookcase, all those vases are beads. You may have done something similar. Corrugated iron roofs, which is funny because my husband's a roofer, so he was very interested in the roofing. Let me know if you have ever made a miniature house. And finally, for the end of the video, some book recommendations. If you have teenagers, Cassandra Clare was my daughter's favourite. She has quite a lot of them, as you can see there. Great books. Obviously, Harry Potter was a favourite, but for a teenage son, Rick Riordan, The Trials of Apollo and Heroes of Olympus were his favourite. If you are still here watching this video, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You must have liked it, so why don't you give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing, and I'll see you next video. Goodbye.